Want to be entertained? Don't change the channel.
Et merde.
I'm going to have fun hyper-over-analyzing the Frog Assassin and you can't stop me. So, Captain Lazerhawk, A Blood Dragon Remix is one of the most insane shows I have ever bore witness to, but I adore every goddamn second of it. The basic premise is, for those who aren't in the know, okay, there's this game publisher called Ubisoft, right? It was founded in Montreuil, France and spanned into a dozen branches all over the world. From Montreal, Canada, to Kiev, Ukraine, to Shanghai, China, to Da Nang, Vietnam, to Singapore, and are responsible for the development of a great number of well-known and respected video game series. Far Cry, Watch Dogs, Splinter Cell, Just Dance, Rayman and Assassin's Creed to name just a few. Now, Blood Dragon Remix is an animated series set in a 1990s retro-futuristic cyberpunk dystopia. Its main inspiration was Far Cry 3 Blood Dragon, an expansion pack for Far Cry 3 which was itself a sort of parody of 80s sci-fi action movies, games and cartoons. In Remix, every single one of these franchises Ubisoft has made or published are all canon to one another and exist within the same universe. Now, just for the sake of absolute clarity, I don't mean that in the sense that they're all literally canon in the events that occur. Some games like Watch Dogs 2 take place in 2016, but since this series takes place in the retro-futuristic 1990s, Watch Dogs 2 can't literally be canon because that would mess with the timeline. Instead, what I mean is that the characters and concepts all exist concurrently. For example, in Assassin's Creed lore, memory is genetic and you can relive the memories of ancestors via certain machinery. That genetic memory rule exists, as do groups like the Assassins, as does or did Third Echelon from Splinter Cell and DedSec from Watch Dogs. Characters like Pagan Min from Far Cry 4, Rayman from Rayman, and Wrench from Watch Dogs all also exist in the same shared time period. To put it simply, it's a reimagined shared universe. And our main cast of characters are forced to work together in a sort of Suicide Squad, I have planted bombs in your head and will blow them up if you don't do what I say style of misfit Black Ops crew. I really can't overstress how fun this series is. It's absurd, it's ridiculous, it's a bunch of series that were never meant to work together, all forced to commingle. Just from the premise alone, one would suspect that it would be a disassociated mess, but it plays it all straight and seriously and doesn't use any of them for cheap laughs, so it just works. Comedy still exists, this series is incredibly funny, but never just at the expense of any one property or character, and is done mainly through the absolute absurdity of things. Actual emotional storytelling is at play here, with characters undergoing arcs and moments of introspection which show how the events thus far have impacted them. And alongside all of that, a serious story with themes of anti-authoritarianism, anti-capitalism and corporate control are all still being told at the same time. Considerations are made in the storytelling and the universe made for each series' quirks, rules and history so that they all intermingle well. As far as I can tell, worlds that don't fundamentally contradict one another, and for the most part take part in what could be considered the real world, all exist concurrently. So, Assassin's Creed, Watch Dogs, Far Cry, Splinter Cell, The Crew, Rainbow Six Siege, and probably others like Ghost Recon and Hawks and the likes, all exist and are occurring concurrently with one another, because they all exist within the confines of the real world. And this remains consistent up until about the 1950s, whereupon the timeline drastically changes due to automation until a giant corporate conglomerate takes over, but more on them shortly. During this time, hybrids are created which are, well, hybrids between humans and various animal species to allow for anthropomorphic animal characters like Bullfrog and others from, say, Beyond Good and Evil to exist. Rayman comes from a different dimension, as do the rabid rabbits, which is used to explain how they aren't just running around beforehand and the existential nightmares that would come with that. And those like him are referred to as aliens. In spite of it being an absolute mismatch of disjointed series, thought has been put into creating a world where they all coexist, and it's not like this is some kind of crossover event where they're all just getting used to each other's presence. Civilization has been like this for close to 40 years now. The world is just like this. Thought has been put into how and why all of these things happened, and how they interact with one another on a regular basis, and how society changed because of them. Visual mashups are aplenty, taking influence from each other's aesthetics, from 8-bit side-scroller beat-em-ups to pixelated FMV full motion video live action, to cinematography that feels like it belongs in each respective series. It's actually a good adaptation too, in the sense that you do not necessarily need to know who any of these people are to enjoy it. It's written in such a way as to endear and develop each character independent of their source material while still paying homage to it. The kind of adaptation where you can recognize a character and go, hey, I know them, that's cool. And if you don't, you can go, I have no idea who this person is, but I like them. I've played a fair few games from Ubisoft, but nowhere near all of them. I only recognized a handful of these people. At the time of speaking, I haven't played Beyond Good and Evil. I don't know who these people are, but I still got the basic dynamics of who these people are and what they were doing though. I don't even know if Lazerhawk himself is from something. I haven't checked. I don't need to check because I don't care. This bloke and his teammates' antics are so compelling and hysterical to me that it makes no difference either way. That is the mark of a good adaptation, and outside of all of that, it just has this glorious, sheer, manic, fast-paced, fun energy that makes it so damned enjoyable to watch. But who cares about how writing works, adaptations, or crime, boyfriends? We're here to talk about an assassin frog. So, of all these series, the one that I have the most investment in, knowledge about, and fun with by far is Assassin's Creed. Which is good because this analysis of Bullfrog is going to rely on that a lot. Bullfrog is perhaps the truest embodiment of an assassin within this show, and of assassins broadly. Which is incredibly funny to me because he is literally a frog, and often drawn in this silly, chibi-esque style, but it doesn't make my statement any less true, nor make him less of a subtly brilliant incarnation of an assassin within the context of Blood Dragon. In this analysis, I want to go over this Blood Dragon remix show with a central focus on Bullfrog, and what makes him such a phenomenal character and a perfect representative of the Brotherhood. And I want to look at this show broadly too. Since when it's put into perspective and taken as a whole, it's kind of around Bullfrog that some of the twists and the whole context of this series begins to change. Also, I'm just having fun. This is a character I really like, in a show I really like, and an amalgamated remix of several series I really like. I'm just having a blast with this one. Content warning. This analysis contains content warnings. If this offends you for some godforsaken reason, I would recommend going to Scandinavia, finding a runestone, and smashing your head into it, because nothing short of the divine might of Odin himself is going to fill you with any amount of basic sense. Major spoilers both for Blood Dragon Remix, the Assassin's Creed franchise as a whole, possibly flashing lights, graphically disturbing visuals, and my potentially pitch black, dry and deranged sense of humour. Viewer discretion is advised. As the series opens, we're introduced to the cyberpunk dystopia that we'll be witnessing, taking place within the context of a broadcast by Marcus Holloway from Watch Dogs 2. A company called Eden has become the ultimate authority over what was once the United States of America. They offer a UBI, a Universal Basic Income. Basically, they give out a free amount of money, referred to as credits, to each citizen for the essentials of life. Then, they began to offer deals which, if someone uses their UBI on food or other essentials also provided by Eden, they save credits or even get refunds. Likewise, certain actions, such as not tuning into air quotes mandatory news programming, will incur a fine. Essentially, they become the economy with near total unchecked power, essentially turning UBI into its own company town scrip, a currency with limited, if not a complete lack of value outside of the confines of the company town in question, the town in this case being an entire nation. Also, if you're familiar with Assassin's Creed lore, the word Eden is probably ringing alarm bells. Anyway, we were introduced to Dolph Lazerhawk and Alex Taylor, his crime partner boyfriend from the crew. They do a heist to steal a video game cartridge which is filled with apparently unlimited money and get attacked by discount Power Rangers called Niji 6. Apparently they're related to Rainbow Six Siege. I've not played it, I've got no idea. For the Rainbow! Oh, Rainbow Six Siege, there's 6 of them and they dress like a rainbow, okay. If it's all the same to everyone, I'm just going to refer to them by a different series of Power Ranger every time they show up. Anyway, they kick the crap out of the Mighty Morphers, and Alex betrays Lazerhawk by citing his desire to take down Eden, and his plans to steal this unlimited credits cartridge required him to turn Lazerhawk over to the person who gave him the location of the cartridge in the first place. Lazerhawk gets shot, knocked out, and wakes up in a cell with 4 other people. Some wrestler dude called Cody Rhodes, Jaden Page from Beyond Good and Evil, and of course, Bullfrog, the humanoid assassin frog. Bullfrog has the most dramatic, over-the-top and ridiculous introduction of any character. Fitting then, since he's the most ridiculous person here. He hides on the ceiling, dramatically jumps down, rambles about the genetic memory rule within Assassin's Creed lore completely unprompted and without context, gets irritated when people go what the hell is this frog doing, and then introduces himself as a member of the Brotherhood of Assassins. I need to specify, again, there is literally nothing that prompts him to do this. No one asked him who he was or what his deal is. I'm pretty sure they didn't even know he was in the room. He just really likes talking about Assassin's Creed lore, I guess. In case his accent hasn't given it away.
Wow, I wake up in.
He appears to be from a French-speaking region, not sure which. Personally, I like to think he's from Quebec, since the very first Assassin's Creed game was made by Ubisoft Montreal, which is located in Quebec, a region of Canada which speaks French. Not only would this be a neat reference to that, but it would also mean that we have a Canadian assassin main character, something which we haven't had yet. During his introduction, he unwittingly blows a bubble. These bubbles allow him and others to see things in both the past and sometimes the future from a third-person perspective. This is a thing he can just do. I assume this has something to do with Eagle Vision and the Animus kind of combined into one another. A sort of a highlighting and/or recon ability that Assassin's Creed protagonists had that is tied into the narrative of the series, and a device used to relive the memories of ancestors respectively. Since he's the only assassin we know of in the series, and no one else demonstrates this ability, he's the only character with whom Eagle Vision could logically be shown through. I mean, unless another character had it and became one of his acolytes, but at that point I'm hypothesizing potential storylines. They're then approached by the warden of the prison. Cody attempts to rush her and she blows his head off. She then explains that they are all gathered due to each possessing a unique ability or skill, and will be operating as her Black Ops unit known as the Ghosts, or she'll blow their heads off again. She entices Lazerhawk with the promise of getting a crack at his backstabbing boyfriend, and away we go. From there, the series follows the antics they end up in as a result of this setup, one of which involved wrestling.
Why do I have to humiliate myself like this?
I can't do it, she can't do it, and he won't do it. And the guy who was supposed to do it is very, very dead.
Oh, I see, he's going to get all the best lines, isn't he? It needs to be said, this is not a series in which our central characters are in any way safe. And if that wasn't made abundantly clear by Rhodes getting his head blown off, it is made abundantly clear in episode 2 where Jade, the second best character, is near instantly executed by their target. Between this being utterly emotionally devastating to Paige, who suffers from an ungodly complicated and uncomfortable position of being the closest thing that Jade has to a guardian, as well as romantic feelings towards her that he admitted to mere minutes ago, and Lazerhawk's presumably now ex-boyfriend not only working with, but apparently sleeping with their target, Bullfrog is immediately made the person who has to try and rein in and serve as the moral compass to the rest of the survivors. He attempts to stop Paige from enacting revenge on their target, telling him that vengeance isn't the way, and later reiterates this to Dolph by telling him that way only leads to bitterness. In both cases, though, he isn't able to convince them. Paige brutally executes their target right then and there. Oh yeah, this series is brutal, by the way. After Paige is done, though he was opposed to it, Bullfrog attempts to show him empathy and consolation. We see throughout the next episode that he keeps trying to keep an eye on Paige, making sure he's alright and covering for him when the warden is making demands of him. As we learn in the third episode, Bullfrog considers himself to be the last of what he calls the Great Guild, implying that he is the last living member, at least as far as he knows, of the Assassin Brotherhood. Because of this, he's our only real example throughout the series by this point. As such, he embodies the Brotherhood, its tenets, and their goals to the best of his ability. Now, before we can continue, we need to understand Assassin's Creed's central conflict. I will attempt to summarize this as briefly as I can, just be aware that everything that I'm saying is heavily summarized and I can expand upon basically every aspect of it for hours. And plan to in another video, but that's neither here nor there right now. When you think of an assassin, you tend to have something very specific in mind. You think of a targeted killing of an individual. And that's a part of what the assassins do. But within the context of Assassin's Creed, to be an assassin in the Brotherhood more so means that you're a follower of their ideology and philosophy. You could quite literally be the ruler of a nation, and so long as you adhere to their ideology, you would still be an assassin. The main crux of Assassin's Creed is the conflict between the Assassin Brotherhood and the Templar Order. Both sides want a world in which all of humanity is unified, but have a fundamentally opposing view on how to get there and what that world should look like.
Freedom is peace.
Oh no. It's an invitation to chaos.
The Assassins believe that this is only achievable through free will, that you cannot force people to get along, and that they must make the choice to get along by themselves. As such, they're a lot less direct in how they attempt to impact the world, trying to guide people towards their ends and make the choice to follow them themselves, rather than trying to force them to comply. The Templars believe that humanity is inherently selfish and therefore requires a society ruled by enlightened individuals, themselves, in order to guide it properly down this path of order. They believe that free will is anathema to this end goal. This is not the kind of thing you can compromise on, and so both sides have been waging a shadow war since the dawn of civilization. So how does Bullfrog tie into this? Well, we'll get to that shortly. For now, let's take a look at Bullfrog's personality and some other aspects of him. He takes his role as an assassin incredibly seriously. It's practically his entire personality, and he brings it up at nearly every chance he gets. which juxtaposed from his ridiculous appearance and chibi art style is incredibly funny. He has the best expressions of anyone in this thing. He adheres to the creed as best he can, and to understand Bullfrog and why he's such a good personification of an assassin, you have to understand the creed, of which there are 3 central tenets. Stay your blade from the flesh of the innocent, hide in plain sight, and never compromise the Brotherhood. The first tenet he adheres to. Despite having one of the biggest kill counts of the main cast, he doesn't kill innocent people. He'll knock them down and hurt them if the situation calls for it, but he does his best to limit those casualties. He'll even avoid killing people attacking him if he can help it. Hiding in plain sight? He's a frog. That's kind of hard for him to do, and the number of situations he could do it in is somewhat limited. In compensation, he utilizes stealth regularly, both to minimize his need to kill in accordance with the first tenet, but also to hide from his enemies, and never compromise the Brotherhood. Now, this is a tricky one. This one is kind of impossible for him to break, since according to him there isn't a Brotherhood to compromise. He's all that's left, and this is where he's at his most amusing, but also most interesting. Instead of being quiet about it, he openly takes pride in being part of the Brotherhood, talking about it very regularly, and while this would normally violate the creed, the situation for him is different. The main reason that not compromising the Brotherhood is a tenet in the first place is because of their conflict with the Templars. For example, if an assassin does or says something that may give the Templars a clue as to where the assassins are hiding, that puts other assassins at risk, not just the one who committed the breach. The idea is to ensure that no one individual brings harm upon other members of the Brotherhood. But there aren't any, only him. So that liberates him to an extent to just talk about the Brotherhood openly. From a certain perspective, if he dies, the Brotherhood dies with him. So him not talking about it could be seen as being what compromises it. Depending on how over-analytical I feel like being, one could argue that if he seeks to rebuild the Brotherhood, this would be how he goes about doing it. So in a literal sense, he's already a solid assassin. He adheres to the creed while adopting it into his specific set of circumstances as needed, which is something that the assassins have to do as a global organization when various cultures require an adaptive approach to fulfill the 3 tenets and of their shared morals. But what about in a more abstract sense? What are the goals of the assassins? They unified Earth, as I said, but why do they seek that? We know that they value freedom and free will, but why? What is the glue that holds their ideology together? The central reason is that they seek peace. Peace is the main thing that the assassins seek, in all things. If all mankind is united, then there would be peace. The reason that the assassins seek to preserve freedom is because they believe that a lack of it will only lead to strife and conflict. But assassin philosophy also demands peace within the self. For example, if someone is driven by anger or a desire for revenge, then they aren't really going to be at peace within themselves. This internal peace is something that assassins also seek to achieve.
Isn't that what you assassins strive for? Peace in all things?
This is why Bullfrog attempts to stop Paige from taking revenge on Jade's killer and warns Dolph of the consequences of seeking revenge against Alex, both of which he's proven right on, but more on that later. But now I guess we should talk about one of the big things about him, the fact that he's a frog. Stick with me on this line of thought for a moment. Despite it being incredibly funny that Bullfrog is a frog, it's actually very in line with assassin philosophy. The assassins oppose discrimination on the grounds of immutable characteristics. Discriminating against someone for, say, being born into an ethnic group would deny that individual their freedom, and so the assassins oppose it. As a result, the assassins have a long history of bringing in members from underprivileged backgrounds, be they targeted minorities, social underclasses, or anything outside that. Within the context of Blood Dragon Remix, hybrids are treated as a sort of caste system, often made for specific purposes and treated with disdain by a lot of humans. This being the case, Bullfrog being a hybrid and an assassin is extremely fitting. The creed isn't fundamentally restricted to one species. Hell, even within the context of Assassin's Creed lore, there are the Isu, which are the creators of humanity, and there are sages, which are humans that are the reincarnated forms of Isu. It's a complicated thing and its whole mess, but they're not restricted from joining the assassins. Hell, there have even been several sages that did join the Hidden Ones before they became the assassins, like Basim, or were aligned with, if not officially part of the Brotherhood, like Eivor. But the point is, even though it's extremely amusing and played for laughs, Bullfrog being a hybrid is actually a very fitting choice for someone who is part of the Brotherhood. The assassins care about equality and freedom, for everyone, no exceptions. That being the case, in this remix world, the Brotherhood would have opened up to include hybrids, not only their liberation, but into their ranks. Alongside that, Bullfrog has a deep regard for life, willing to fight to protect his teammates and to save civilians that are put into danger, not hesitating to put himself in harm's way. There are very few series in which I can say the following sentence, but here we go. Due to Alex getting away in episode 2, he is able to open an interdimensional portal to a world in which the rabid rabbits, depicted here as gigantic monstrous kaiju, are unleashed and wreak havoc within the city, causing huge damage and killing civilians. Bullfrog is the only member of the team to be shown to be openly disturbed by all of this. He's easily one of the friendliest members of the group as well, openly trying to make conversation with all around him. He speaks frankly and honestly with anyone who comes to him, even if he despises them, and shows kindness and mercy even to those that really do not deserve it. Despite the cliche nature of it, he is the type of person who is kind enough to stop his comrades from doing something that they would regret, or at least try to. He possesses a dislike of those in power stomping on those underneath. This goes along with his dislike of Eden. He has a strong sense of justice, believing that history is kind to those that are just. While their primary conflict is against the Templars, the assassins fight for the oppressed in any and all circumstances, including ones like slavery, mass discrimination, or just the abuse of power. Part of episode 3's plot is stopping what Alex has planned. They track him to a company that their previous target ran. When Dolph brutalizes an overseer, Bullfrog tries to calm him down. Then they track Alex from there.
Can I put some music?
Shut up.
Okay, d'accord.
This is the face of a man who has no idea how to deal with the people around him. Everything he does is gold. Alex's plan is to use high-tech glasses that affect the brainwaves of humans and a wrestling match in order to drive them into a frenzy to start attacking hybrids. He basically wants to start so much conflict within Eden's society that it collapses and is then rebuilt from the ground up. During this, Paige is cornered and Bullfrog goes to help him. When they learn that the glasses are being powered by an antenna, Paige decides to stay behind to help the victimized hybrids, while Bullfrog goes off on his own to shut down the antenna. He has one of his best moments where he is getting the snot beaten out of him by 3 guards, doesn't concede, regains the initiative, and rapidly takes his enemies down in a glorious action sequence and then knocks out the antenna at the same time that Dolph is killing Alex. Now that the humans have attacked the hybrids and have now stopped, not knowing that humans were being controlled, the hybrids start attacking the humans and get gunned down by police enforcement, Paige ending up as one of the casualties, while Bullfrog is taken captive as he attempts to save him. Now, in order to get to some of the things I really want to talk about with this series, we need to take a brief aside from Bullfrog for right now and talk about a bunch of other characters. Bear with me because this will become essential soon. So after episode 3, the Warden rescues Lazerhawk from a tank shell, takes him into the desert and patches him up, even installing a new upgrade in his arm. Because of what happened in episode 2 and 3, Eden is using the resulting chaos as a justification to attack the Wastelands with their military. The Wastelands being this region where groups and enclaves that resist Eden's rule all reside. It is also an exceptionally poor region, with many innocents. They now have a justification to blame all the chaos on them and wipe them off the map. The Warden wants to warn the Wastelands of the upcoming attack, but Lazerhawk wants nothing to do with it at this point. The pair of them stand off, are then captured, and wake up in the prison where they were being held in, with the Warden now being publicly considered a traitor to the state. While they're there, she explains that her name is Sarah Fisher, daughter of Sam Fisher from Splinter Cell, where he is reimagined in this series as someone who lost his legs at some point in time, who worked with Marcus Holloway and DedSec, his hacker network, to get their subversive statuses erased so that his daughter can live a decent life in Eden. However, Sarah has been brainwashed by Eden's propaganda teams and betrays Sam and the collective. Sam is placed on probation while DedSec is arrested and made to play some sort of taxi virtual reality game, where if they don't play or fail to deliver the passenger on time, they get a massive electrical shock. And this special kind of torture, while being used to throw in a video game reference, is also world relevant, since all of the self-driving cars, drones and the likes are powered by the people in these VR games.
Slavery!
Sarah joins Eden's military, and 8 years later, Sam calls her one last time, in which they argue about Sarah being selected for a cybernetic enhancement program, and her considering herself to be the daughter of a traitor. When they're done, Sam launches an operation to rescue Holloway, in one of the most glorious sequences where Sam makes the case that legs really only slow you down. It's glorious. He rescues Holloway, and Holloway, wanting to rescue the rest of his friends, teams up with Sam to train a group to fight Eden in what became known as the Wasteland Uprising. They begin to broadcast the truth towards people in Eden's megacities, as seen in the intro of the first episode. In response, Eden mass missile strikes the Wastelands, making Sarah begin to question everything about Eden. Sam died during this conflict, and Sarah is filled with regret for what she did, and for Sam dying believing that she hated him. She reveals that she used the ghost program to try and take down Eden from within. When Lazerhawk expresses sympathy, his cybernetics are gone, and it's revealed that they're not in a prison at all. They're in the VR facility, and Holloway has been watching their entire conversation to gain intel, and to get revenge. Holloway torments Sarah by showing her the battles Sam died in, over and over again, and the horrors of what Eden did to the Wastelanders, while for Lazerhawk he just lets him live out whatever fantasy he wants. A world free of conflict, with Alex, on a beach, on some tropical resort where the other ghosts didn't die. While all of this is happening, Rayman. Rayman in this universe is a news anchor for Eden, as well as a sort of children's presenter, show host, and the likes. He's the face of Eden, basically. In episode 3, during an interview with one of the Ninja Storm 6, where Red is being a specious prick, he goes off script and swears at him. He gets drunk, yells at the board director, the people who run Eden, and is later replaced by an exact replica of himself. He is later contacted by a member of the board telling him, if you seek the truth, talk to the frog. Followed by the news that Bullfrog is awaiting a hearing, which is certainly rigged. So Rayman goes to the courthouse and talks to Bullfrog.
Was good. Want some?
Bullfrog claims he has no idea where the message came from, but still agrees to speak with Rayman. He goads him a bit, mocking him for expecting something from someone who is considered a terrorist, but then he shows empathy. He watched the broadcast, where Rayman was spewing lie after lie, but he recognized his outburst as the one true moment, and that is what Eden is punishing him for. Eden offers Rayman a juice because he's just nice like that.
Tropical or orange?
He is a gem. It becomes clear that Rayman is a true believer. He isn't just peddling propaganda, he genuinely believes that Eden helped him rise above what he was, and helped him to become something. He genuinely cares about what he's reporting and believes it wholeheartedly. He does work with kids, and in his darker moments he thinks about kids who are like him, who he wants to inspire and help.
You really don't have to sell Eden's propaganda anymore, sir. Especially not to me.
Least of all to him, eh? How fascinating. Why ever not? Bullfrog then tells him that he knows what he's looking for, and warns him that he won't like it. He then lets out another bubble, and in it are visions of the past. Rayman's news anchoring and reporting contrasted with the brutal reality. Poverty is still rampant. Eden is a totalitarian police state. The police are corrupt and kill en masse without hesitation. Hybrids are brutalized and treated like trash, while Rayman is reporting that it's safe and lovely for all. They even show children, proudly fans of Rayman, as child soldiers brainwashed by him without even realizing what he was doing. Rayman is openly horrified by it. And Bullfrog tells him the frank truth, that Eden just needed a friendly face. They used him and lied to protect their interest, and if anyone protests, they're silenced, like Rayman has been. He warns Rayman to be careful. At which point, Operation Overdrive's Red shows up, is a twat again, and beats up Rayman. Bullfrog calls him a coward, and Rayman runs away. Back with Lazerhawk, in a quiet moment with VR Alex, he admits that killing Alex didn't bring him any satisfaction, or heal him emotionally, or do much of anything. He even claims it just made it worse. He contemplates that he should have listened to Bullfrog, and gives him the best summary that anyone could ask for.
The most ridiculous assassin I have ever met in my life. Also the kindest.
When he realizes that he doesn't actually know what happened to Bullfrog, if he's alive or if he's dead, if he needs help or not. Just because of this possibility, Lazerhawk chooses to leave the VR world that he's in. He speaks with Holloway, who is charmed by him, seeing that he's just like Sam Fisher, always having faith in people, even those who don't deserve it, like his daughter. Lazerhawk says that despite everything that she did, he thinks that she's a decent person at the end of the day. Holloway lets Lazerhawk go and leaves him outside the VR facility. He takes the car and heads back to the megacity. Back with Sarah, Holloway continues to interrogate her, not believing her that an Eden military strike is coming, but she insists, and when Sarah finally apologizes for what she did, Holloway lets her out of the VR. He openly tells her that he planned on torturing her like this until he got bored of it, but now he's letting her go and believing what she says. Lazerhawk convinced him, and he's willing to put the years of suffering behind him, accept that Sarah has changed, and work alongside her.
I've got unfinished business here.
Huh? What then?
She was lying, not about what happened, just that she hasn't turned on Eden at all. She let them both be captured. The upgrade inside Lazerhawk's arm was a virus that has now infected the VR facility to bring it under her control. Let's cut straight to the good bits, shall we? Marcus and Sarah fight, Sarah revealing her body to be massively cybernetically enhanced, while Holloway fights using drones and uses I'm not sure which game this is, to combat the virus. Sealing himself inside so she can't get to him, Sarah starts to go to nearby users of the VR system and executes them to get Holloway to stop, open the doors, and give her control. Unable to let his friends just be executed, Holloway surrenders. Lazerhawk runs into the Eden military on their way to the VR facility, now fully aware that he's been betrayed by Sarah. The Beast Morphers 6 and Ren in particular attack him, and on a nearby hovering news screen, we see that Bullfrog is about to be executed. They make a show out of it, in a ton of genuinely disgusting ways. It's mandatory viewing, treated like a game show instead of an execution, call it a retribution machine, and have a segment called The Terrorist's Final Words, and even get a kid to flip the switch. It's so fucked up! The Rayman replacement asks Bullfrog if he has any regrets for what he did, and Bullfrog says that he does. Not for anything he's done, he's lived his life by the creed and that he doesn't regret. What he regrets is not being able to protect his comrades. Openly shedding tears, he says he hopes that Lazerhawk is listening and that he's alive, and that he's sorry he failed him. Then commercial breaks occur before he's executed, because of course they do. Wouldn't be capitalist dystopia if I had an ad break every 5 minutes. The power of socialism compels you to fuck off! Infuriated by this, Lazerhawk goes on a goddamned rampage. He batters the Wild Force 6, the entire Eden military, and openly refuses to die until he's killed Sarah. Rayman, or, well, I guess Ramon as he's now calling himself, I guess in some kind of psychotic breakdown, breaks into the building with the board of directors and holds them all at gunpoint with submachine guns, shoots one of them and yells at them until they cancel the execution, refusing to allow another hybrid to be murdered on his show with his face in the most gloriously ridiculous sequence for anything Rayman I have ever seen. What the fuck? Who came up with this? The board of directors calls off the execution, Bullfrog is saved, thank God.
Are you happy now?
No, I'm not.
Oh, this show goes hard. Cut back to Holloway and Sarah in the VR facility. This is what we've been building up to. This is why Bullfrog is the central thesis to all of this, and this is what gets me about this show more than anything else. Sarah says that she agrees with Holloway and that she doesn't like how the world is either, and then she tells him that Eden has gone by many names over time.
You probably heard of the Templar Order.
Oh, they're Templars! Eden are the fucking Templars! Also, if you're familiar with Assassin's Creed lore, the word Eden is probably ringing alarm bells. Anyway, the pieces of Eden, hyper-advanced artifacts from the Isu that the Templars used to control people that the Assassins try to stop them from getting. It was right there, staring us in the face from the first few seconds. Here, just look at the Templar insignia. If you add a cross in the center, Eden's E, and then a red around that E, you've got Eden's logo. It's just a new stylized version of their Templar insignia. Bullfrog, being an assassin, should naturally raise questions about where the Templars are, but they've been right in front of us this entire time. It's not like the Templars being a corporation is a new thing. In the 21st century, most of their operations are done via Abstergo Industries, a massive corporation which they use because being an international company gives them more free rein to interfere and influence policy than doing so directly. They can just move their forces across borders freely because they're just moving their employees around, not an army. They can just use money to lobby governments. It fits their motives to a T. Oh, but we aren't done. Lazerhawk shows up. Having returned to deal with Fisher, he collapses but grabs hold of her wrist and detonates the bomb in his head at point-blank range, supposedly killing himself, although an ending sequence at the end of the episode does imply that he's still alive. But Sarah isn't affected. Her cybernetic enhancements are much, much further on than we first believed. And there's something else too. We see Rayman, Ramon, whatever his serial killer name is, having massacred the board of directors, who again I'll specify are the heads of the Templar Order, I'll remind you. One of the seats has no blood on it at all, Sigma, and on the back of Sarah's head, we see Sigma's logo. Do you understand what this recontextualizes this entire series as? Number one, more so than anything else, this is Cyberpunk's fantasy Assassin's Creed. This entire series just made Eden, the Warden, and the main antagonistic forces throughout, the Templars. The struggle is against them. This is Cyberpunk Fantasy Assassin's Creed. This is an Assassin's Creed cartoon taking place in an alternate fantasy setting. Up until this point, I was just analysing Bullfrog in the sense of, okay, if he were an Assassin's Creed proper, how good of an assassin would he be? The answer being a very damned good one. But now the whole script has been flipped. It might be the series with the least obvious presence, with Bullfrog being its only visible representative, but Assassin's Creed is now, intentionally or not, the bread and butter that holds this madness sandwich together. It's the least visible franchise involved, but the one with the strongest overall presence on what makes the show work. That's kind of like how Assassin's Creed world works, actually. The Assassins and Templars are barely visible to the rest of humanity, but they impact it in the largest ways. All these other series exist, but they're caught in between the conflict between the Assassins and the Templars. The Templars have just changed their name, outwardly at least, to Eden Tech, which in retrospect makes a number of Bullfrog's more ridiculous antics make more sense when taken as a whole. Bullfrog and Lazerhawk are the only characters who got any proper ridiculous introductions, whereas the rest of the Ghost just kinda showed up and then died in rapid succession. He's arguably the single most relevant character. The second thing recontextualizes what Sarah was doing this entire time. This is a story with heavy revolutionary sentiments, but at the same time, the events of the series follow a power struggle between leaders of the Templar Order. It's implied that Sigma was the one who sent a message to Rayman telling him to seek out Bullfrog in the first place, and the Templars using assassins to their own advantage is far from a new thing within the context of their war. The best case here is that Sigma is a true believer in the Templar cause and is disgusted by the corruption that has set in with the rest of the board of directors, but they would still be part of this system and of Eden, the only one who thinks that they can fix things. Incidentally, to all the snobs who I see that go, well, the Templars are the only real option, the Assassins make nice sounding words but they would end society. I can now point to this series and tell you with a straight face and without any hints of irony whatsoever, this is what Templar rule looks like. A mass surveillance state where they mass execute even the mildest of risks, where obedience is demanded in its entirety, where they could end all the world's problems but choose not to because it maintains their power, and a bunch of autocrats ruling from behind closed doors. That's what the world needs to thrive, is it? This is your utopia, where a bunch of elites play power games with the lives of their citizens to backstab and betray one another while they live nice and comfy lives while the rest of us suffer and struggle. Forgive me for being more inclined towards the Assassins. And hey, don't blame me for any of this. The series made the Templar connection. I just call it like I see it. God, Templar sycophants infuriate me. Now I have an example I can point to show how their rule inevitably ends up. I love this show. But the UBI in this series into perspective, doesn't it? It sounds nice at first, but until all the stipulations come in, and then becomes just another method of control, like all money is, so long as we live in a system where it's required in any capacity to survive. And hey, if we now have the Templar Order as canon, I get to bring up the fact that in Assassin's Creed lore, the Templars invented capitalism, but aren't capitalists themselves. They made it as a way to separate the power of their rule from the dwindling popularity in the idea of the divine right of kings.
Democracy must die to ensure the stability of the world. Capitalism will end it. We created capitalism, but we are not capitalists.
Man, I love having examples this straightforward. Disagree with me now. Whether or not you think capitalism is good or bad literally isn't relevant. That's the origins of capitalism in Assassin's Creed lore. And since the Assassin's Creed lore is a major influence in remakes up until the 1950s, then that means that the method of capitalism forming is canon to remakes. Eden, the Templars, want the world to be like this. It keeps them in power. They have the money. The UBI goes back to them, and if you don't play along or work in their system, you and your children starve to death. Okay, we had a long break from talking about Bullfrog, I know, but I felt that it was important to cover some of the events of the series, as well as understand a bit about the lore he comes from and the world he inhabits, because these things can change and impact the way that his actions are seen as. I went off on a long screed about how Eden are Templars and how they made the system intentionally, but that was honestly more of a launching off point to talk about how the Eden system operates so that we understand what Bullfrog fights against. Remix is very good at conveying all of this information very quickly, where you don't need the information from Assassin's Creed lore to fully understand the implications of it. Basically, I was showing off. You didn't need to know how capitalism formed in this universe. All you needed to see was the results of Eden systems. I mostly did that for fun because I find the way the world of Remix took, merged and harmonized all these different series and put them into one fascinating. If anything, I was just admiring the writing. But hey, back to that question at hand. How does it change how one might look at him after all that? For me, it doesn't change my perception of him at all, honestly. In fact, it only solidifies it further and reinforces my adoration of him. We know his enemy, we know the lore, and we know the events of the series. But what about him, exactly, as a character, makes him such a perfect representation of an assassin? To put it simply, He's the moral heart of the group. He's one of my favourite archetypes in fiction, a character who lives in a dystopian world but is still a kind optimist. Not because they're naive or blind to the reality they live in, but because they look that world straight in the eye, knowing that it's cruel and unfair, but choose to be kind and optimistic even in spite of it, and who gets through things because of that. He brings out the best in those around him. It's only thanks to Bullfrog that Rayman even ended up doing what he did to the board of directors. Without that conversation and reality check, it's impossible to know what Rayman may have done. He seemed extremely willing to just beg for mercy before that point, and it wasn't until he learned the truth that he snapped, and because of that, because he spoke to Rayman when he had every reason to tell him to just get out of his sight, Bullfrog survived his execution and inadvertently helped kill the board of directors. Which, okay, I'll admit I'm not sure about calling that bringing out the best in him, but that's technically the morally correct option here, I guess. He acts as the moral compass that brings out the best in Lazerhawk, making him reject his paradise and then fight the entire Eden military. Again, something that may not have happened had Bullfrog not been the moral center of the ghosts. And he regrets none of it. He only regrets those that he couldn't save. But being an assassin, doing the things that required, killing people, talking to Rayman in a way that implied he knew that Eden and the Templars were the same thing, that he doesn't regret. Right up until the moment he thinks he's about to be executed, he regrets none of it. Even while claiming to be the last of the assassins in this world, he never once wavered from the creed, when he could have done so fragrantly, and no one could have stopped him. He embodied it to its fullest. Being in the Brotherhood isn't just about killing Templars or enemies of freedom. It's about inspiring that love, that empathy, that kindness and optimism for their fellow man and others. And that Bullfrog objectively does better than anyone else in Remix. He's a true assassin, through and through. Even within the context of the Assassin's Creed series, removed from Remix, he would still be the embodiment of a true assassin. And if there is an afterlife of any sort, be it spiritual or VR, and there is any justice in this universe whatsoever, when he goes, ideally not before rebuilding his world's great guild from the ground up, he'll be welcomed into Valhalla, sit in the halls alongside Altair and Ezio and Connor and the Fright Ones and Eivor and the rest of the assassins, and welcomed as a brother. And then spend the rest of eternity throwing plates at Shay Cormac, Arno Dorian, and the spiritual personification of Assassin's Creed Odyssey, a treacherous fuck, a horny on main bellend, and a baffling failure respectively. And so concludes my analysis of the Secretly Assassin's Creed series Captain Lazerhawk, a Blood Dragon remix, and of Bullfrog the Assassin, a character I've had more fun with than I've had with a lot of things in a very long time. Have I gone overboard and overanalyzed? Almost certainly. Do I care? Absolutely not. I had a blast with this. However, I'm going to go and pass out for the next 3 years, so you know the drill, and I'll see you next time.